All right. Good morning, everybody. So I wanted to start this class off today with a bit of a reteach. A lot of people are struggling during our sheet brain dissection to understand some and remember some of the key components. We're going to talk a little bit more about the different brain structures that you observed during the dissection. I'm going to show you some pictures. You're going to identify some of those brain sections again. But the first thing I want you to do while I take attendance is create a list on your computer of all of the different brain structures, the different parts of the brain that you can remember off the top of your head. Okay, you have about 3 minutes to do that while I take attendance. And as a reminder, once I call your name, please let me know that you are here nice and loudly. Make a list of all of the brain structures, like the different parts of the brain that you can remember off the top of your head. Okay, so Philip, Mariah,
I'm here.
Rico,
Here.
Anaya,
Here.
Brianna,
Here.
Naima,
Here.
Samaya,
Here.
Lauren, Kira.
Here.
Yes, was here Sherelle,
Here.
Isis,
Here.
Ramani,
Here.
Cam, Sydney,
Here.
What was it? You said it's cold.
Miriam,
Here.
Teresa, Ariana, Rashad, Tyrell.
Sure.
All right, perfect. Take another minute to wrap up creating your list. We're going to discuss it in just a moment. I'm going to call on people randomly as a cold call to just shout out one of the different structures that you've written down. So take another 60 seconds in order to finish up your list.
Like, which one are we on?
You're creating a list of the different brain structures that you can remember off the top of your head.
Oh. All the way back to this.
Right, nervous system anatomy. We're going to go back and we're going to reteach some of those content, because some of you were struggling with it during the brain dissection. Have a nice somebody's birthday. You got another 21 seconds. Got another 21 seconds in order to write down your list.
Because it's just some fun, but
If you can hear me clap once.
yeah.
If you can hear me clap twice. Nate, can you shout out one brain structure that you have written down?
Cerebellum.
Cerebellum, absolutely. Lauren.
Frontal
The
lobe.
frontal lobe. Anaya. The central nervous system, sure. That's the whole thing, right? Brianna. The pituitary glands. Teresa. Cerebral cortex. Okay, that's actually very similar to the cerebellum. So those are two names for the same thing. Miriam. Temporal lobe.
I got
Yeah.
spinal cord.
No.
Spinal cord. Okay. Tyrone.
Do up and down.
The what now? Medulla oblongata. Absolutely. You guys remember a lot of these names. I'm gonna project some pictures on the board, and we're gonna identify some of these really quickly. We're not gonna spend a lot of time on this. We're just gonna spend some time. These are some pictures by one of the groups, and we're gonna identify some of these structures that we can see in these pictures. Okay? What do you see in this picture right now?
The brain.
Yes, that's the brain. What's the outer covering of this brain? The outer surface that you can actually see in this picture.
Oh.
Raise your hand if you can tell me. You look like you got 5 to see.
The dura mater.
The dura mater. Creepy. That's the dura mater. What does the dura mater do? Raise your hand if you can tell me. Miriam? It protects the brain. How does it do that?
Has layer of protection to all the I don't know how to describe it, but all of them like things in the brain. You feel like they're being like dirt and dirt, but
I hope that there's not a lot of dirt that gets through your skull and into your brain.
describing
Okay, it protects it from definitely something, not just like
infections and stuff.
okay, possibly infections. You know, we talked about meningitis, right? And how that's kind of kept at bay largely by the dura mater, but eventually it may break through without antibiotics. So that's true, but there's something a little bit more obvious that the dura mater can help protect against ISIS.
And liquids.
Liquids, okay, also true. Not quite what I'm looking for. Think about what was it like when you were opening up that dura mater? What did it feel like?
Oh, the dirt.
The dura mater specifically. Were you able to just kind of like just like peel it away easily?
No.
Okay. Were you able to just like pick it off? You had to cut it, right? So think about the dura mater in comparison to the rest of the brain.
There's things over a little test. Then the rest of the brain, so like problems like structure, you know, like if you get your head or something like that, you're like if that wasn't there, you would have confusion like you wish you were brain would be like sushi, like noodles and
Yeah. Because the rest of the brain is so squishy, right?
Yeah.
Like if you put, when you put your finger or a probe on the brain, it's just kind of all squished, so the dura mater was removed.
So even when we like studied, it just like even with a little flick, it was like the cut was there. It's like you could do nothing about it.
Absolutely. It was that's what the whole brain structure is like. It's kind of a squishy ball, a little bit more dense than jello, but not by a lot, right?
Yeah.
The whole rest of the brain was very, very squishy, but the dura mater was hard and protected.
See.
So we have a picture here as well, and it's like zoomed out, unfortunately. But think about the middle section of the brain. What kind of brain structures do we have right in here? This middle structure connected to the brainstem. Is that what the cerebellum is? Not quite. Yeah.
The you know that start with T, the bottom T's.
T. Okay, so the TH. Thalamus. Yes, the thalamus. We had the thalamus in there. What did the thalamus look like?
It was like oh, it was shaped like kind of like a whole like here whole.
I'm gonna ask another question in just a minute, and when I do, I want to hear from someone on this side of the room. But turn and talk to a partner and try to describe what the thalamus looked like to your partner. So I want to see you guys turn, face your partner. I want to see you make eye contact. Thank you. Now turn and tell your partner what the thalamus was like.
Okay, it was like that. Animals between the letters. You know, find out how to get my kid. You know, like, you can see. He's like, I couldn't figure out.
It was weird. I think you can do better than that.
It was not emotion. Oh,
Oh, like a big part on the impression. Oh.
Okay.
I don't really know that shape or me.
Okay. Bring it back in 3, 2, 1. So raise your hand if you can, in a sentence or two, describe what the thalamus looked like.
It's a little round thing that's located inside the brain.
Absolutely, it's that little round thing, and it was kind of easy to see the difference between the thalamus and the upper portions, right? So this section that you can kind of still see here, and I wish I had a better picture for you. This section here, that was where the thalamus was. Now, What about the upper portions? This bit up here at the top of the brain. What kind of structures do we have in there?
Yes, is that where like the brain manager?
Okay. Yeah, true. We have gray matter in there.
I don't know what else after that.
That's okay. It's been a hot minute since we did this. That's why we're going back over it. So we're dealing with the top portion of the brain. If we go back to our slides. This is the cerebral cortex. That's where we have the cerebral cortex. What parts of the cerebral cortex do we have? Raise your hand if you can tell me one. Samaya. The occipital lobe. Okay, that's one. And that one does what? Eyesight and vision. Absolutely. Teresa, what's another lobe of the brain?
Right.
What does it do? Processes sensory information. What kind of sensory information might we want to process, Lauren? Okay, information that you get from others. Okay. Well, we know that the occipital lobe deals with eyesight, right? That's sensory information too. Does the parietal lobe deal with eyesight too, then?
No.
No, what does it deal with? What kind of sensory information are we dealing with? Miriam?
I don't know. Like basically like my frontal. Don't help like let's say you work something in class with that one go through retainer because that frontal.
Frontal.
That's what I'm talking.
If that's frontal. Let's take a look at what some of the functions of the parietal lobe do. That's why we're reviewing. The parietal lobe contains the somatosensory cortex to process sensory information. Maybe if we narrow it down by talking about the temporal lobe. What does the temporal lobe do?
It's frontal.
Movement is also frontal.
Oh, so is both parietal and frontal like movement and touch?
Touch. Okay, touch is some sensory information that the parietal lobe deals with. Absolutely, touch. What other? Yes.
The parietal one is like when you touch something hot and cold and it like your brain. You know that's like touching code. Was that that?
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good description. That's what the parietal lobe is dealing with. Temperature and touch is something rough or smooth. We have eyesight in the occipital lobe. We have speech in the temporal lobe. So everything else is dealt with by the parietal. What other senses? Smell, touch, taste. There we go. All of those pieces of information are processed by the parietal lobe. And that brings us to the frontal lobe. You've already given me a little bit about it, Miriam, but Isis, can you tell me something about what the frontal lobe does?
Okay. It's like your motor skills. Like how you think.
Okay. Your motor skills and how you think. Pretty good description. Here's a question. Let's go back to our dissection. In the dissection, when you were looking at the lobes of the brain, was it easy to tell which one was which?
No.
Describe what that looked like.
Yeah, it was like you couldn't differentiate which was what or what was what.
How then do you think we know that we have 4 lobes if it wasn't easy to see?
I think because we kind of know like we're like the lobe frontal lobe in front, occipital lobe in the back, and then parietal temporal on the sides. I think that's how you can identify it.
True, that's how we can identify it, but think about it in terms of history. How do scientists know that we have these 4 lobes if we can't see it when we dissect it? Like the cerebellum, you could definitely tell what that was, right? Yeah, that cerebellum was very obviously different. The thalamus was a little less obviously, but definitely different from the rest of the brain.
Yeah.
But the different lobes of the cerebrum were harder to differentiate. So how do we know that there are 4 lobes? I want you to take about 30 seconds to think about it. Then I'm going to have you turn to a partner and discuss it. Make eye contact with your partner. I know, awkward, but you can do it, I promise. You're big kids, you can handle it. Make eye contact with your partner, and I want you to discuss some ideas. Brainstorm how we might have figured this out. You got 1 minute to discuss. Okay. Seconds to finish discussing. I want to hear some ideas. I've heard a couple already. Think about it. So you can have your story was like one day recently. Remember,
So what again, I still didn't get this machine.
absolutely. Harsh. Wow, that's fine. Back in 3, 2, 1. Okay, what are some ideas that you came up with? Mariam?
You know how they did like provide us back in the day. Mine was basically saying that like the eye maybe when they maybe when they like poke through the eye and they snip to a certain part, they could tell like, oh, a suture right here is affecting their brain. And they also said also people could be like born with less parts of the brain possibly.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd be like, oh, because they don't have this part of the brain, this is affecting this and that.
So basically, by process of elimination, is what you're saying. Can you, for everyone who may not remember, what is a lobotomy?
That's early. They like touch a part of your brain. Kind of. I don't know if they cut it out or if they just like.
No, they cut it out.
So
They get stabby with it.
So like.
Yeah. Yeah, they get stabby with it and they just start cutting things out.
Okay, so cut it apart right now.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about this when we went over the nervous system anatomy portion as well. There was a prevailing theory in the 1800s and even before that, that seizures in particular were caused as a result of individual parts of the brain. Personality issues, were caused by parts of the brain not acting right. So the conventional wisdom was, well, if this part of the brain is broken, and we just cut it out of there, you'll be all good to go. That worked about as well as you might expect it to, if you really think about it. But what it did do is give us a lot of information about what these parts of the brain do based on what you can't do if you don't have it. Fantastic answer there, Mariam. Fantastic answer. Is that roughly what you had too, Teresa, or did you have other ideas? Now, obviously, in the modern day, we have even more tools to be able to do this. Brianna, can you think of a more modern tool that we have now? I know we discussed it.
We said, no, don't focus on this because I get EEGs or
EKGs, EEGs, but
yeah. So one of them they can use for that. You said MRI too.
Mm-hmm.
Which when you said that it did because like when I like doctor shows they'll put you in it and then have a better look at your brain. And for real on those two only those two that I can think about off the top of my head.
Okay.
That one.
Absolutely, but those are all examples of some more advanced technology that can help us understand these concepts. Now, there's one more part of the brain that I want to make sure, two more actually, that I want to make sure we review. We have this, I put up this diagram here. This part here, what is that? What is that? The other two thing? Not quite. I promise you do have that. Right, the spinal cord, yeah.
No, let's say that image from my God.
The medulla oblongata is part of this.
Harder.
Yes, that's one piece of this larger structure.
The other part, the cerebellum.
The cerebellum is the top part, the with the different lobes. This is down towards the
Spine.
very close to the spinal cord. The brain kind of like balloons off of this like a flower, which has a.
The center.
There we go. The brainstem. Now the brainstem has three parts to it that we've discussed. One of them is the medulla oblongata. What's the other? What are the other two? The other two are a little harder.
And that's a
Hmm?
say
Appendicles.
like a close.
So, what are the other parts of the brainstem? Mm-hmm. Midbrain and pons, absolutely. Now, that concludes the section that I wanted to talk about the brainstem. Someone briefly tell me, what does the cerebellum do? And what did you see when you cut it open? I want to hear someone on this half of the room at this point. Someone on this side, I promise. Absolutely. What does the cerebellum do? That's this part. And what did it look like when you cut it open? Hmm? It did feel really mushy,
I
huh?
don't like the mushy part. Controls like how you move, like control the movement of your body.
Well done. Absolutely. That's what it does. It controls the movement of your body. Now, Isis, what did it look like when you cut it open? What was the texture like? It was very mushy, but
It's nasty. It was like
nasty. Okay.
it had like tree branches.
Yeah, that tree-shaped pattern, right? It looks like branching trees. Well done. So that concludes our brief reteaching of the different parts of the brain. Now we're going to get back into our regularly scheduled programming of talking about the digestive system. So you can go ahead and open the digestive system section in ISED now. And we are going to prepare for that. I want you to quickly review your notes from the digestive system while I pull this up. We talked about the accessory organs on Monday. We talked about the accessory organs on Monday. Now we're going to talk more about the primary organs of the digestive system. We're pulling that up for you now. Briefly though, what were the different, what was one of the accessory organs that we talked about on Monday? Samaya? The liver was one of them. Teresa, what's another one? The pancreas. Anaya, can you give me a third one? Lauren, can you help her out? You finding your notes still?
Yeah.
Okay, find them quick. Gallbladder. Absolutely, yes, the gallbladder. So, Anaya, what was that third one? The gallbladder. We have the pancreas, we have the liver, and we have the gallbladder. Those were the three organs that we dealt with on Monday. Now we have a whole bunch of other organs that we're going to deal with. There's a whole bunch of other ones that we're going to deal with today. All of those organs were accessory organs because they don't actually have food pass through them. They're not the tube that food passes through. Now we're going to kind of take a journey through the whole digestive system, and we're going to play the part of food molecules as they go through. So you have your key concepts that we did before. We're gonna do on Friday an activity about essentially following on the path of a food particle.
Speed dating, right?
We're not gonna speed date, although the hormone speed dating was very effective. All the questions about the different hormones, you guys did very well on your test with. So, pedantic though it may have been, it also worked, and I'm proud of it. So, we're starting with the oral cavity. The oral cavity is the part that chews up food. It's your teeth, it's your tongue, your lips, your teeth, the tip of your tongue. That's the oral cavity. It's the first step that we pass through as our food molecule, and this is where life starts to become difficult for us as a piece of food. This is where we get chewed up. We call it mastication. This mast here, that's a prefix that has a bunch of different meanings, but you're going to see it in this context referring to chewing, the process of chewing. It's the same reason that we have mandibles in some other animals that that refer to the jaw. This mast or mand prefix deals with the jaw and the mouth cavity. So that's why we call it mastication of food. It starts the process of chemical digestion. We do have enzymes in the saliva, but we're primarily dealing with this mechanical digestion, the actual breaking up of food. We're also dealing with the enzymes in the saliva beginning to do the chemical digestion as well. That's the second part of the oral cavity. All of these are the different parts of the oral cavity, and most of these should be pretty familiar to you. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them because you should know most of these already just by being alive and having them. You have your lips and cheeks, the palate, that word may be new to you. We have the tongue, the salivary glands, and the teeth. And again, you know what these do, but I do want to see these in the notes that you're taking right now. Once again, I'm going to come around and I'm going to give you a check mark in about 10 minutes where I will be checking your notes to make sure you have all of the things that you need to have in your notes. Now, very briefly, the only one I want to address here in particular is the palate. That term may be new to you. It prevents food from entering the nasal cavity. You have two palates in your oral cavity. The first one is the hard palate. The second one is the soft palate. If you take your tongue and you kind of touch the top of your mouth just next to your teeth, that's the hard palate right there. It doesn't give much. But if you move your tongue back and you feel the back of your mouth, that's the soft palate. It gives more. It moves around. It's softer. Yes. Absolutely, can do. It's softer.
This make me, you know when you like throw up sometimes and then you come out your nose too, but that one depends on like, oh. I'm sorry. That never happened to you before? No.
Well, Miriam, so when you throw up and it comes out your, it's okay. When you throw up and it comes out of your nose, not your mouth, I'm going to go with a little bit less of a disgusting one. If you laugh when you're drinking something and it comes out your nose, that's a little bit more relatable of an example, right?
Out of your nose, I bet you're already throwing it out of your mouth.
You know what? We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna just pretend that what you asked me is. We're gonna pretend. 3, 2, 1. We're gonna pretend that the question that you asked me was if you're drinking something and you laugh and it comes out your nose. Yes, that's what your palate is designed to prevent. That's what your palate is designed to prevent. You have a hard, a soft palate, but it's not always perfect. Your nasal cavity and your oral cavity are connected to each other. You still have this tube. You can see this palate here. Do you see how it slopes downward towards the throat? It's got that slope there. That's directing food downward to prevent it from going up. But if you laugh or you have a lot of air going up through your nose while you're also trying to drink something, that airflow can also push it up towards the nose anyway. It doesn't happen as often as it otherwise would because of the palate, though.
Right.
Miriam, dang.
You don't have to.
Well, we just talked about norovirus and how I had that over the weekend.
Right.
So, too soon, Miriam. Too soon.
You said that.
Oh.
Language tourist. But yes. Now, if you can hear me clapping. If you can hear me clap, thanks. Yes, that is what your palate is designed to prevent. Moving on from here, because you know what your lips and cheeks do, you know what the tongue does. These things are pretty self-explanatory. The salivary glands, however, are the glands that produce saliva. That's why we call it that. Yes? Go very quickly. This is the pharynx. We talked about this once before already when we were talking about the accessory organs, but the pharynx is a passageway for food as it travels down the throat. It's just a passageway, but it has a couple of important parts. We have the nasopharynx, we have the oropharynx, and we have the laryngopharynx, which is a hard word to say. Can you say laryngopharynx?
Laryngopharynx.
Laryngopharynx, one more time.
Laryngopharynx.
Yeah, there we go. You can see in this diagram what all of these are, and this also shows you what we were just talking about too, Miriam. You can see the slope of this palate here as it kind of directs food downward rather than upward. But you can also imagine if you have airflow coming up through here because you're laughing, giggling, or hiccuping, then that can potentially push that food or fluid, more likely, up into the nasal cavity, which is a hard time.
That might be why. I feel like before I throw I kick up.
Yes, that's a hard time. It's not fun.
So,
What do you notice about the difference? What do you notice about the difference between the oral cavity here and the nasal cavity?
they're connected.
Okay, so Miriam says that they're connected. True. What else do you notice about the difference between the two?
The difference in these.
The nasal cavity that we have here and the oral cavity that we have here. Isis?
The nasal is like it's a lot more space.
Yes, it's a lot more space. The nasal cavity is a lot larger. Why would the nasal cavity be so much larger than the oral cavity?
So you don't show.
Raise your hand if you can tell me. Whole bunch of people gave me an answer, but only one wants to raise their hands. Okay, Brianna?
The airflow. The airflow.
Better airflow, absolutely. What else, Marion?
That's like the big way you chew so you don't like you're reading stuff and you gotta chew and you choke.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Isis?
I said something similar to Mary.
Okay.
Wait.
What do we do? This nasal cavity that you have here. Why do we have noses?
Breathe.
Well, yeah, but we can breathe through our mouth.
To smell.
To smell, right? So, what does that tell you about why we might have a large nasal cavity?
We need to smell.
Okay, why might we need a large nasal cavity in order to smell? Take about 30 seconds to think about it.
I was just thinking like the loose thinking all like it's like it gets all built up inside. Sometimes you can still smell even under the nose. So when you're like chairs.
Okay, to help with that, you want to flat space. Ironically, okay, raise your hand if you can come up with an answer now. Or if you're not sure, raise your hand now. Let's go back to our brain dissection. When you look, when I pulled out the brains, you had your brain stem in the back, and the cerebellum there. You also had most of the brain in the front. There was something else attached to the brain in the front too, though. What was that? Do I need to pull out the brains?
In the front.
Yep, in the front of the brain. The anterior of the brain. We had something else attached to it that we really didn't do anything with. Like the stem part. That's in the back. You guys are gonna make me bring out my brains, aren't you?
How about that little white hour?
Which sounds a lot more violent. I'm gonna pull out my brain, doesn't it? No, like without your PPE, you will not be touching this, but I can because I have gloves. Look at this. This part right in the front here. Hmm? What is this part in the front? Come closer if you need to. Yeah, come on closer. What if this part of the brain right here? And is it even part of it? Where? This part. In the front.
That's the front.
This is the front. This is the back.
No, sure. You can see what it is.
It's the cause you told me not to cut it at first. It's the like thing that like keep it there. Hold on.
What animal?
This is a sheep. You done the dissection, right?
No.
No, he wasn't here.
Oh, right. Yes, you need to see me in office hours tomorrow. Because like the quarter ends Friday and this is worth a lot to your grade. So you, Imani, Philip, and Angel all need to see me in office hours tomorrow. Like have to. Only opportunity. Okay. I'm disappointed you guys don't remember. That's okay. That's why we're reviewing. That is the olfactory bulb. That is the olfactory bulb. Based on that term, what would you think the olfactory bulb would do?
Make sure you build the.
What is olfaction? Smell. Yes, Isis. Olfaction refers to smell.
I was referring to the smell of the shit.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? That's true. Okay, Teresa, you said smell. I'm gonna give it to you. So olfactory refers to smell. So what does the olfactory bulb do? My eyes do what? See? My ears do what? My tongue does what? So what does the smell?
It's the smell.
What's the part that does smell?
Your nose.
It's not this. This is not the part that does no. What part of the brain? No. The nostrils are just flaps of skin. Like people can still smell even if they have their nose damaged or cut off. Like this outer part, not it.
So it says the olfactory bulb is to actually helps you smell.
That is precisely it. Say that louder, Isis.
The olfactory bulb is exactly as well. It helps you smell.
The olfactory bulb is the part that does the smelling.
Okay.
Why do we have such a massive space in the nasal cavity?
So you can smell it.
So that we have enough space for what to do the smelling.
The olfactory bulb.
You saw the size of those olfactory bulbs.
Right.
We need space for those olfactory bulbs to sit in. That's these ridges that you can see here. They're kind of alluding to the olfactory bulb in that space. You saw how that olfactory bulb had a bunch of like holes and passageways in it, right? That's for air to be able to flow through. Your sense of smell requires a whole bunch of different receptors and parts, just like your vision and hearing do. That olfactory bulb is a relatively decent sized structure, as you saw, that's responsible for processing smell, or at least receiving smell. Yes.
Not saying I was assuming this question.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, that can. Close to the front of the brain, right here. This is where your olfactory bulb sits though, right here, which is why sinus headaches are in the front. But yes, and that's what a sinus headache is too. It's pressure building up in that olfactory bulb. Yes. Can you go to the bathroom? Give me about 5 minutes to finish the discussion.
Oh.
But yes, that can absolutely get damaged, and people have lost their sense of smell as a result. People who lost their sense of smell because of COVID,
You supposed to say that COVID is
like COVID can infect parts of the olfactory bulb and damage those temporarily, and until it repairs itself, you can lose your sense of smell.
But do we know why?
We do. A virus damages cells. It literally causes cells to explode. They go pop, and then they release a whole bunch of extra viruses.
Of course it is.
They do. They just explode. They go kablooey, and then they release all the extra viruses so that they can infect more cells. So if those cells are exploding, then it's really hard for them to also be picking up on smell after being exploded. I imagine I would not be able to do much after being exploded myself. Though again, I would imagine. I don't know. How are we doing? Okay, perfect.
It's really worrying.